Season 3's journey continues. We arrive at Where the Buggalo Roam. Title's a reference to Where the Buffalo Roam, which is a Hunter S. Thompson text, well known more so, I suppose, in a way as... Not really, okay, maybe, but that film from 1979 starring Bill Murray.
I always forget this episode's named after that, yeah.
Well, because you would have known of this episode long before you knew it.
Before the movie, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a case where, like, I'm not a big fan of the Terry Gilliam film. I think it's kind of terrible.
Is it Terry Gilliam?
The 90s film.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But
Sorry,
like,
the Fear and Loathing.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that film, but and I love Terry Gilliam, obviously, but one of his weakest films ever, but yeah, where the Buffalo Roam, you might think, even if you, like me, you're not a fan of the Terry Gilliam film, someone.
Just someone, yeah.
Art, something, I don't know. No, it's just, that's the thing, it's if you're thinking like, oh, this film from the 70s would be better, if you're a younger person like me, obviously people from back in the day know it's garbage, but if you're younger and you're like, oh, is this going to be a lost classic? No.
Not close, nah.
It may be slightly better than Fear and Loathing, but
there's one good scene.
So is Vomiting.
Yeah.
What's the good scene where the Buffalo
Roam? We're like... Because the only good thing about that movie is Bill Murray doing the impression, right?
Yeah.
And there's one scene where he's like sitting on a car in the desert, and then like a helicopter spotlight hits him and he gets paranoid or something like that. Like, I just have a memory of a scene being like, okay, that was a good scene.
Mm.
The one good scene in the whole movie.
At one point they're like taking over like a plane and you're in the cockpit and you're just like, what is going on?
Oh, that's in the book. It's way better in the book. Yeah, in the movie it's terrible.
Anyway, this episode, so we're getting into this one. When I was younger, I really, really liked this episode. And yeah, no, I still do. I think it's something about it being a potent science fiction premise, being set on Mars, the Buggalo and the Martians. And it's also, obviously it's a take on sort of an old Western story archetype, but like you don't really think about that just because it is so like literally Martian. And that's just kind of what I enjoy about it.
But it does have the Marlboro Man.
Yeah, that's true.
And Zapp Brannigan introduces himself as the man with no name.
That's classic. I love that line when we were young. But yeah, a lot of visual variety here. And it's, I guess, the third of a trilogy of the Kif and Amy episodes. If the first one's Amazon Women, this is the second, and the third might be Kif Gets Knocked Up a Notch.
Oh, well, the first would be maybe the Titanic one.
That's when it's introduced, but like it doesn't come back till...
It's more of a prototype, yeah.
It's like there's a whole season between those two episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
But then you also had it's an episode with a very strong script. Most of it's really funny. Like almost every line in this episode's really funny. Bender's really unapologetically mean. Fry's really affably thick.
And it's like the sort of like peak Zoidberg moment as well.
Oh, and he just wants to be a part of like the Wong family.
He's ongoing. That's
so parasitic.
Mooching like parasitic like plot. It's hilarious.
And I gotta say, this is possibly my favorite Zapp Brannigan appearance in a Futurama episode. I think he's funniest in this episode. It's possibly
okay.
Like just his.
It's really good.
Because the interesting thing is we have him at the start there, kind of seeing Kif off, and then you don't really think he's going to come back into the plot. Yeah. Of course he does. Like how could they not only have him in one scene? Having the man with no name pan out, Zapp Brannigan, just the adulation the Wongs have for him is part of why this is funny is because you have people who buy into the Zapp Brannigan legend next to him and him sort of like basking in it. I think that's possibly why part of what I like about it. And just him trying to negotiate with the Martians, like throwing the Slurm can, like that's who he is. Like this is him on the job, you know what I mean? We don't actually see it that much. Yeah. We just hear about what he does, but this is him doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's partly why this is possibly my favourite Zapp Brannigan appearance. And there's a few good ones. Like, I love him in 300 Big Boys, for example.
Yeah, he's great in that.
He talks about the Martian, the spiders, deaths. That's a good one. But also, Warriors the H Word is classic Zapp as well, to be fair.
Yeah, he's got quite a few great appearances.
Mm.
But yeah, this episode is, like... I don't know, I didn't used to enjoy it as much when I was younger, but the older I get, the more I sort of enjoy this episode. It seems to have just a sort of, like you said, interesting sort of like visual tapestry of like the Martian landscape. You get that like the face on Mars, which is a real like, rock formation that people think looks like a phase. Like it's Futurama at its best in that way, where it's got like sort of references just like, you know, put in there.
The Olympus Mons.
Less explicitly, you know. It's and the conclusion where Kif rides the buffalo, I always thought was really strong. I guess when I was younger, I didn't like this episode much because I felt it lulled a bit in the middle part. But watching it now, I'm like, I sort of get what it's going for, and I understand it more generally. But then the conclusion and like the latter half of the episode is really strong. It's a great episode, honestly. It's funny, it's interesting. It's got lots going for it.
Yeah, it's a strong example of season 3 really doing like a relatively simple sitcom or like genre parody premise, but amping it up with a lot of sci-fi, like Bird Butterfly Script.
And it's like the real like Dances with Wolves.
Sure. You know, love the Buggalo sound effect. Love just the 3D animation. Yeah. the and then they're clicking as they're all tumbling out of the Olympus Mons, you know, the crater. You know, the 3D animation as they're tumbling down the volcano there. Like, it's really good stuff. Like, I think it's a good example of like what the show could do with like a relatively simple premise. You know, dress it up with a lot of good sort of like sort of archetypal / prestige sci-fi dressing, and then also have just the characters being themselves in the best possible way. Because we get to a point where we know the characters, so just having them respond to these situations, it's like almost like you must think, if you're in the writing room and you know these characters, it's kind of just writing themselves. You know, like, you know that the first character to comment on Amy being kidnapped, you know, to console Kif, or rather not. You know, Fry might not know what to say. Leela's don't know what to say, and Bender's the one who just quickly jumps at the chance to make some nasty remark at him. You know, it's just it writes itself.
Yeah, definitely. This episode kind of feels like that now that you bring it up. It really does write itself. It's like this show in a groove.
Yeah.
By this point, you're in a real groove. This is like a grooved episode.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's very strong. I almost don't know if I have that much else to share about it as a result, because I just think it's really solid. And...
Yeah, it's better maybe experienced just by watching.
Yeah, because remember in Cyberhouse Rules, we were talking about like whether the degrees to which that episode's plot works. You know, it enables a lot of discussion. Well, that's Lobstertainment being like sort of a strange example of an episode which did a lot of things which we didn't care so much for when season 2 episodes did it, but they nailed it in like a very sitcom sort of like unpretentious way. And now this is an episode where it's so solid sort of... to the point where I don't know how much else I can extract from it.
Yeah, it's just like it's explicitly good, you know. It's just a really good episode. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, it's not exactly cerebral, but it's incredibly fun, and if you're watching it for the first time just all the way through, it's one of those episodes where, like, unless you're very finicky and just sort of like, ooh, does it fit criteria, and try to rate it out of 10, and even if you did, you'd probably rate it fairly highly.
I guess it has an interesting, like, societal thing. Like, it's pretty explicit, once again, with, like, you know, the Marlboro Man and Zap Brannigan, like you mentioned. And then Kif, like, not being, like, the typical 20th century depiction of a manly man or something.
Yeah.
But it does that in a kind of, like I said, explicit way, but it's not, like, you know, obnoxious in any way. You just think of it as funny.
Yeah.
Like you know, Amy's parents, like, trying to court her with the Marlboro Man. It's kind of fun. And then he's friends with Joe Camel, you know. It's a bit on the nose, but it's still, like, you know, the episode's... when it is trying to say something, it does it subtly and effectively, I feel.
Yeah. It helps, you know, we know the characters and we like the characters, and so it becomes a matter of, wanting to see Kif succeed and sort of, like, show up the other, sort of figures who are not believing in his capacity there.
Yeah, Kif is one of the more likable characters in Futurama.
Yeah, no,
most of them are jerks, but Kif is, like, actually one of the non-jerk characters.
Yeah, that's very true.
Amy's kind of a non-jerk as well. She's only a jerk to Leela, but that's like a joke in itself.
Yeah. Anyway, unless there's anything else, maybe we'll close it here.
That's about it. Good episode.
Yeah, thanks everyone.